Let me tell you a story that, back in 2019, shook the entire state of Texas to its core. It began with the sudden disappearance of a young woman and her newborn daughter, captivating the attention of every local resident who followed the search with bated breath. What started as a missing persons case, tragically, ended in a devastating conclusion, and behind this terrible crime was someone no one could have possibly imagined. At the heart of this narrative was 33-year-old Heidi Broussard, a diligent waitress at a restaurant in the quiet, small Texas town of Buda, population around 7,000. He was also attending veterinary school, pursuing his dream of becoming a veterinarian. Heidi had recently become engaged to Shane Carey, his partner of 10 years. Their relationship began almost instantly after they met working together. It was truly a love story. They already shared a 5-year-old son, Silas. But there was another significant person in Heidi's life, his best friend, whom he had met at a children's camp when they were both just 11 years old. This friend's name was Magen. Their bond was instant and profound, a friendship that flourished for 2 decades. Magen, also 33, worked as a wedding planner. It seemed like a perfect alignment. In early 2019, when Heidi joyfully announced he was expecting his second child, Magen too shared news of his own pregnancy. Heidi was absolutely thrilled at the prospect of sharing this incredible journey with his closest friend. He envisioned them taking walks together, confiding in each other about the joys and anxieties of impending motherhood, and offering mutual support. They truly immersed themselves in this shared experience, meticulously planning every detail of their pregnancies and post-birth periods. They bought newborn clothes, cribs, and diapers, attended childbirth preparation classes, and even went to the pool together. Magen was even present for the births of both of Heidi's children, including baby Margot, in November 2019. That's how close they were. The women dreamed of their future daughters growing up to be best friends, just like them. But this idyllic picture shattered on December 12, 2019. At 7:30 a.m., Heidi dropped off his 5-year-old son, Silas, at school, a routine task. By 2 p.m., the school had contacted his fiancé, Shane, reporting that Heidi had not returned to pick up his son after school. This was completely out of character for him. He had never even been late before. A knot of dread began to form in Shane's stomach. He immediately drove to the school, picked up Silas, and headed home, fully expecting to find Heidi and the baby there. His initial thought was perhaps Heidi and their daughter were tired. Maybe he had just fallen asleep and forgotten to pick up his son from school. But the silence that met him inside the house was chilling. The house was empty. Shane tried to push away the rising fear. Perhaps Heidi was out for a walk with the baby and had simply lost track of time. He tried calling his beloved, but there was no answer. His next thought turned to Magen, his best friend, who was also expecting and due any day. Perhaps they were together? He called Magen, but she claimed she hadn't seen Heidi at all that day. This struck Shane as incredibly odd, given their daily calls and walks. An even stronger wave of panic washed over him. He began searching the house for any clues, and what he discovered confirmed his worst fears. Heidi had left all of Margot's baby essentials: clothes, diapers, food. His own wallet, money, cards, and car keys were also still in the house. This was it. Something was terribly wrong. He never left the house without these things. Deeply concerned, Shane waited a little longer, but by 7 p.m., he could no longer ignore his gut feeling. He called 911 to report Heidi and baby Margot missing. Police arrived immediately and began their search. A thorough examination of the house revealed no signs of forced entry, struggle, or anything amiss. All the belongings were neatly arranged. Given the nature of missing persons cases, law enforcement initially focused on Heidi's fiancé. However, 33-year-old Shane had an ironclad alibi. He had been at work all day, immediately clearing him of official suspicion. Nevertheless, the public remained unconvinced. This was 2019, a time when the horrific Chris Watts case, where a man murdered his wife and two daughters, was still fresh in everyone's minds. Many drew parallels, casting distrustful glances at Shane. Shane's demeanor during interviews fueled public speculation. Many perceive him as insincere and even guilty, which raised widespread doubts about the honesty of his words. Because of this, Shane was literally hounded on social media. He himself stated that he had last spoken to Heidi on the phone around 8:30 that morning. He recounted that Heidi had told him he had dropped his son off at school, then visited a book fair with Margot, excited about books he'd bought for himself and new ones to read to Silas. Heidi, an avid reader, was constantly building his home library. They said goodbye. Shane went back to work, and he never heard from her again. Detectives began thoroughly examining the family's home and the surrounding area. A critical piece of information surfaced. Heidi's car was found in the garage. Shane confirmed that Heidi drove exclusively his own vehicle and never used taxi services. This strongly suggested he couldn't have gone anywhere and was likely still somewhere nearby. Heidi and the child were officially placed on a wanted list, and a search of the area was underway. As part of the investigation, detectives located a surveillance camera at a neighbor's house and immediately requested the footage. Analysis of the grainy camera footage and interviews with neighbors became a top priority. The video confirmed Heidi's morning routine. At 7:30 a.m., he was seen driving to school with a baby and his older son. He then returned home with his daughter. However, later in the footage, Heidi and his baby were seen leaving the house and getting into a silver car. Unfortunately, the quality of the footage was so poor that it was impossible to make out the license plate or even the make and model of the car. This was the last confirmed sighting of Heidi alive. A neighbor corroborated the video, recalling seeing Heidi in their apartment complex that morning, carrying a small child and approaching a parked car. A woman exited the car and greeted him. Then, both women and the child got into the car and drove away. It was now clear that Heidi and baby Margot voluntarily got into another woman's car. Police immediately began working to identify this unknown woman. Shane, Heidi's partner, recognized the description of the silver car. It matched Magen's vehicle. He was certain it had to be her. Heidi would never, under any circumstances, get into a stranger's car with a stranger, especially with a newborn. Furthermore, Magen even had a spare key to their house, which they had given her for emergencies, highlighting their deep trust. When detectives contacted Magen, she vehemently denied any involvement or knowledge of Heidi's disappearance. She claimed he hadn't seen Heidi that day. But then, he offered a disturbing piece of information, seemingly trying to deflect suspicion. He alleged that Shane was involved. Magen claimed that Heidi had confided in him about physical abuse from Shane, describing him as a heavy drinker prone to violence. According to Magen, Heidi had wanted to leave him many times, but changed his mind after finding out about his second pregnancy, deciding to give him a second chance. He said that Shane's proposal and their upcoming wedding had brought a period of calm to their relationship. However, Magen insinuated that Shane might have reverted to his old ways. As proof, Magen provided photos of Heidi, purportedly with bruises, but investigators were immediately skeptical. A closer look at the photos quickly debunked Magen's claims. One photo clearly showed a foredrip on Heidi's arm, likely from a hospital visit, while the other depicted a small bruise, definitely not indicative of severe domestic violence. Crucially, there was no independent evidence that Shane had ever harmed Heidi. No police records could be found from Heidi's home. He had never sought help, and Shane had no history of legal trouble. Shane vehemently denied the accusations, reaffirming his deep love for Heidi and their impending marriage, insisting there had never been violence in their relationship. Meanwhile, investigators expanded their search for surveillance cameras, finding some nearby. These newly acquired recordings were of significantly better quality, allowing detectives to positively identify the silver car. The unambiguous conclusion: it was Magen's friend's car. Shane immediately identified it. So, Magen did meet his friend that day, despite his insistent denials. But why did he lie? Being the last person to see Heidi, Magen quickly became the prime suspect in Heidi's disappearance and possible child abduction. Investigators immediately set up surveillance on Magen's home in Houston. During the surveillance, police observed Magen's boyfriend, Christopher Green, driving somewhere. They followed him, discovering he had gone to the store to buy baby formula. Detectives approached Christopher, showing him a photo of baby Margot in Heidi's arms. Christopher immediately identified the infant, confirming this was the child Magen had presented to him as their own, and that the baby was currently in the house with her. Any lingering doubt about the friend's involvement vanished instantly. Armed with a search warrant, police and Texas Rangers returned to Magen's Houston home. Magen emerged from the house, visibly agitated, holding a baby monitor. Inside, they found baby Margot, peacefully sleeping in his crib. Magen continued to insist the child was his and vehemently denied any involvement in the disappearance of Heidi and his baby, but no one believed his words. Shane, who was present, immediately recognized his daughter by his face and even the clothing he was wearing. Margot was safely taken into Child Protective Services. A thorough search of the house revealed nothing immediately suspicious. However, as detectives stepped outside, their attention was drawn to Magen's silver car, the same vehicle believed to have driven Heidi away. As they drew closer, they were met by the horrific, unmistakable odor of a decomposing body, one they knew all too well. When police opened the trunk, they made a gruesome discovery. Inside was Heidi's body, badly decomposed, stuffed into a large duffel bag. Magen was immediately arrested. DNA testing later confirmed their grim suspicions. Magen had been harboring Heidi and Shane's baby in his home. The little girl was quickly reunited with his devastated father, who became a widower with 2 children on his hands, right before the holidays. The family had been joyfully preparing for Christmas, wrapping gifts, but now, on the eve of the holiday, their world was shattered. The dream of celebrating Christmas as a family of 4 was irrevocably destroyed. For a long time, Shane couldn't comprehend that Magen, who was Heidi's best friend and had been friends for over 20 years, could be capable of such an unthinkable betrayal. The 2 women shared an incredibly close, trusting bond, rarely argued, and no one could have ever foreseen such a horrific outcome. After Heidi's disappearance, Magen called Shane daily, feigning concern and inquiring about the investigation's progress. Shane even admitted he thought Magen seemed overly obsessed with Heidi, wanting to monopolize his every minute. It later emerged that Magen harbored deep jealousy and resentment whenever Heidi spent time with his husband and children without him. The investigation uncovered disturbing digital evidence. Magen's phone and computer showed extensive searches for Amber Alert, information and details about the search for Heidi. He typed Heidi Broussard into search engines a staggering 162 times. An autopsy revealed the horrifying cause of death. Heidi had been brutally strangled, both by hands and with a sledgehammer. The case was immediately reclassified as a homicide, and the investigation into the circumstances deepened. Magen, in his fabricated story, told investigators he had given birth at a birthing center in Udland, north of Houston, on December 10th, just a couple of days before Heidi's disappearance, and had brought the baby home that same day. However, under questioning, he conveniently couldn't recall the exact name of this supposed birthing center, making it impossible for authorities to verify his claims. Police contacted every maternity hospital in the state. Not one had any record of a woman named Magen Faramusco. It became abundantly clear that he had never visited any medical facility nor been registered during his supposed pregnancy. He had lied to his boyfriend, telling him he went to the doctor weekly. Further investigation, tracking the cell phone movements of both Heidi and Magen, revealed they had indeed traveled together from the city of Buda to Megan's home in Houston, the very location where Heidi's body was later discovered in the car. What's particularly disturbing is that Megan's car, with Heidi's body in the trunk, sat parked next to his boyfriend's house for an entire week. Magen drove this car every day, even as the horrific smell of decomposition became unbearable. How could Megan's boyfriend, Chris, not have noticed such a pungent odor? He was immediately called in for questioning. Christopher told investigators that he and Magen had been together for about 2 years. However, in March 2019, he grew tired of the relationship and decided to break up with her, asking him to move out. Magen vehemently resisted, pleading to stay in a separate room, claiming he had nowhere else to live. Feeling sorry for him, Christopher allowed him to stay. They lived in separate rooms in his house and barely communicated. He found himself unable to evict him from the house. When he later learned he was pregnant, he decided to try giving the relationship another chance. Christopher admitted to only touching Megan's belly a few times during his supposed pregnancy and never seeing him unclothed due to their strained relationship. He saw his belly growing, but never suspected it was a fake pregnancy. Conveniently for Magen, Christopher was consistently out of town whenever he claimed to have a doctor's appointment, and he never invited him along, nor did he particularly want to go. He was also out of town during the supposed birth. Magen later informed him that he had given birth to their daughter on the beach during a walk. When he returned home, he found him with the child in his arms and accepted his story. According to him, the birth went smoothly and he didn't seek medical attention. Megan's family members, who had video called him, expressed joy at seeing him with the baby. Even more strikingly, relatives who visited Magen a couple of days before his supposed birth recalled that he genuinely looked pregnant. In a tight t-shirt, his belly appeared significantly large, leaving them with no doubt that he was indeed expecting. The chilling truth was that Magen had never actually been pregnant. He had meticulously faked the entire pregnancy for 9 months, deceiving everyone, including his ex-boyfriend Christopher Green, who believed their baby was due on December 1st. It was a sinister, elaborate, 9-month plot to steal Heidi's daughter before she was even born. This plan was devised by Magen to win back his estranged boyfriend. Once Christopher discovered the horrifying deception, he immediately broke up with him and temporarily moved in with his mother, overwhelmed by media attention and profound unease. Christopher was never charged with any crime. Police were convinced that he was completely unaware of Megan's monstrous plans. He was simply an unwitting witness in this deeply disturbing case. Magen Faramusco herself grew up in a large family. He had 9 siblings, the youngest of whom was only 9 years old. He desperately wanted to have many children and a large family, but he couldn't get pregnant, and his relationship with his boyfriend also didn't work out. In desperation, this terrible plan came to his mind when he learned that his close friend was pregnant. Magen was terribly jealous of Heidi and his dream of motherhood. He decided that his friend's child would be the best way out of the situation for him. Magen lured Heidi and the baby into his car, driving them a significant distance from home. There, he brutally attacked and strangled Heidi. He then callously placed Heidi's body in the trunk and returned home with the newborn. As the search for Heidi intensified, Magen put on a chilling performance, pretending to be utterly distraught over his best friend's disappearance. He even contacted several local TV stations, urging media coverage, carefully ensuring no one suspected his involvement. Magen was charged with the kidnapping of Heidi and the baby and capital murder. The investigation revealed he had a prior conviction for theft, adding another layer to his deceptive character. He orchestrated this elaborate, months-long operation, faking a pregnancy with the calculated intent of passing off his best friend's newborn as his own. The prosecution suggested that Megan's plan was not merely to abduct the child. It was always about murder. He knew Heidi would never voluntarily give him his baby and was prepared to kill for it. A mutual friend revealed that Heidi's second pregnancy was unplanned, and at the time, the family was facing significant financial difficulties. Initially, Heidi even considered terminating the pregnancy. It was then, chillingly, that Magen urged Heidi not to, offering him, "Give the baby to me." At the time, everyone dismissed Magen's words as a dark joke. But perhaps that was the moment his horrific plan began to crystallize. Heidi later abandoned the idea of terminating the pregnancy, deciding to keep the child. Shane, Heidi's fiancé, was utterly devastated by this immense loss, left alone with the daunting prospect of raising two children. Shane, still reeling from the tragedy, strongly suspected a second person was involved in the case. He contended that Heidi was physically larger and stronger than Magen at the time, making it extremely difficult for Magen to overpower him alone. Shane firmly believed someone aided him in the murder. He also couldn't fathom how Magen was able to single-handedly place Heidi's body into that large duffel bag and then lift it into the trunk. Heidi's family also believes someone helped Magen, though they don't believe it was his boyfriend, because he wanted to break up with him, and he was able to keep him through deception because of the child. In his case, he would have had no reason to kidnap someone else's child. He himself became a victim of Magen's deception. There was even an unconfirmed witness who claimed to have seen another person in the car with Magen and Heidi, but could not make out his face. This unconfirmed witness alleged that Magen was in the front passenger seat, Heidi was in the back, and the unknown individual was driving. However, this crucial detail was never officially corroborated. Shane also recalled Magen telling him and Heidi that he had given birth to a girl on December 8th, but refused to show the child to anyone, not even Heidi. Magen maintained a tight veil of secrecy around his newborn, never posting photos on social media, claiming he had terrifying dreams of someone stealing his child, which scared him so much he wouldn't show him to anyone. Even before his disappearance, Heidi had complained to his fiancé about Magen's strange behavior. Heidi found it peculiar that Magen hadn't invited him to his supposed birth, especially since Heidi himself had invited Magen to his own births twice. Heidi wanted to be there for his friend at such an important moment, and he even felt offended by the exclusion. But Magen simply brushed it off, claiming he was superstitious and preferred not to share that intimate moment with others. Looking back, Shane also remembered another unsettling detail. When Heidi was being discharged from the hospital, Magen, who was supposedly 37 weeks pregnant, literally couldn't tear himself away from the baby, constantly asking to hold him. His interest in the child was already disturbingly intense, though no one realized the sinister implications at the time. One unresolved question remains. Why did he leave Heidi's body in the trunk of his car instead of disposing of it by hiding it somewhere else? Even in court, Magen continued his delusional claims that Margot was his biological child. During a psychiatric evaluation, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. Despite these diagnoses, he was found sane and competent to stand trial. With the overwhelming evidence against him, it was undisputed that Magen had meticulously planned and prepared for this murder over many months. Ultimately, on the advice of his lawyer, Magen Firamusco entered into a plea bargain with the prosecution to reduce his sentence and avoid the death penalty. He waived his right to appeal, a decision supported by Heidi's relatives, who wanted to avoid the agony of endless appeals. Magen was sentenced to 55 years in prison without parole. At sentencing, the judge delivered a poignant statement, acknowledging that no sentence could truly bring justice for such a monstrous crime. He highlighted how Magen had deprived an innocent child, an innocent baby, of the opportunity to grow up with his mother, irrevocably destroying an entire family. No matter the sentence, no matter how long, no matter how harsh, nothing can change that, the judge declared. This truly heartbreaking case leaves so many questions. What are your thoughts? Let's discuss this story in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.